Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our webinar this afternoon. Hi, I'm Judy Howard with Customer Experience here at ARC, and I'm really excited that I have two guest presenters today with me. I'm sure some of you have heard of Doug Nass before. He's presented at our Travel Connect, and he's done webinars for us before in the arena of fraud. But also I have with us is pretty much the fraud, the management of the risk management team here at ARC. I'm going to introduce Cornelius Hadding, who has been with ARC for over 2 years, but has a broad, vast knowledge of fraud awareness prevention in the industry. He has worked pretty much all over the globe. He has worked in Europe and Asia, Africa, the Middle East, the U.S., and pretty much everything in between. So Cornelius comes with a broad experience and a lot of knowledge with us into this arena. And also Doug has been with ARC for over 25 years. 23 of those years have been in the area of fraud prevention. He's going to kick off our fraud month, but just I'll tell you a little bit about that before we get started. This team has put this exciting month together with 10 webinars all together. They'll have white papers. They'll have a lot of exciting things on the fraud area on the website, but they really want to bring to you insights, best practices regarding how you as agents can maneuver in this challenging environment with fraud and how you can protect yourself. So without further ado, Doug, I'm going to turn, and you can ask questions throughout the presentation. Just ask them in the right-hand column on your screen where it says questions. We'll be interjecting throughout this presentation, so Doug and Cornelius can answer those. Doug, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad we're able to have, hopefully you'll find this an interesting webinar. We'll talk about a lot of the high-level schemes going on. We won't get super far into the weeds, but we wanted to do this one to kind of show the various schemes going on out there, how fraudsters operate, how they target agencies, and we hope you'll find it interesting. Okay, next. So why a fraud awareness month? One of the problems we are facing is the huge costs that it impacts on the industry. Various figures throw around a lot of types of numbers, but it's generally recognized that there's at least $1 billion a year in fraud impacting worldwide. So there's a lot of money flowing at stake. The fraud does not appear to be slowing down in any way. And these fraudsters that target our industry, they're very innovative. Once one type of scheme or tactic gets shut down or not as, they're not as successful at it, these guys are always coming up with new ways and new creative ways of getting what they want, which is airline tickets, hotel stays, car rentals, those types of things. The focus today is really about more of the frauds committed via over the phone or via email versus schemes that target the online agencies. The reason we're doing that is because through this series of webinars, starting tomorrow, we'll show you, you'll learn in more detail about how fraudsters target online agencies. Okay. But some of the challenges that we have are that most of the transactions are non-face-to-face, also known as card not present, CNP, and really any merchant selling over the internet or over the phone, or where you don't actually see your customer, everyone's facing the same challenges. So this is not unique to the industry. The level of risk is very high for non-face-to-face transactions, and the card schemes are very aware of that. Another challenge we have is with address verification. We at ARC talk to tons of travel agencies, and we are very aware that they know that they need to be verifying customers' addresses, the cardholder address. One of the problems or the challenges we face is that so many of the fraudsters have a true cardholder's name, address, They may have the CVV number. And it's because of so many of the data breaches out of merchants, banks that have been going on. They're, practically every week there's a new news report of a breach in which cardholder data is taken. And later on in the month, one of the webinars is really going to go into more in-depth about this, but basically the hackers that go in and steal a lot of that data in turn will sell the cardholder information in batches to other criminals on the underground internet or the dark web, whatever you want to call it. And that webinar later this month will, as I mentioned, go into more detail there. So when we here at ARC are talking to our agents and they'll say, I verified the address, I thought it was a good transaction, I got the approval code, what else could I do? But we just want to make everyone aware of how prevalent it is that cardholder or these fraudsters posing as new customers especially are going to pass an address verification. Another challenge we have is that the tickets are live as soon as they're issued and eligible for exchange. We do have fraudsters who will go and order tickets three weeks, 3 months out, and as soon as they get that itinerary emailed to them, the fraudster knows these tickets are live. And so it makes it very difficult to say, only look for transactions, in the next few days as being high risk. At the end of the day, all tickets issued have a risk. And this is a particular problem with e-tickets, because back in the day, 20 years ago, when a travel agent was issuing airline tickets against a credit card, so often they were, of course, the paper tickets, and they were being FedExed or mailed to the customer. And that gave them extra days to potentially learn about the fraud, get nervous about what happened, and get the shipment returned back to the issuing travel agencies. But that doesn't exist anymore with e-tickets. They're live the second they're issued. And another problem we have is the tickets, especially those international tickets, are pricey. They're going to be at least $1,000, $1,500. You start issuing 4, 5, 6, 8 of those, you're quickly into building up an exposure to significant losses for a travel agency. And we know from our experience that a lot of the smaller independent agencies, this is a significant cost, and it would be very difficult for any agent to be able to recover losing $6,000, $8,000, $10,000. Another challenge we have is we still hear from time to time agents mentioning, well, I got an approval code, therefore it's a legit transaction. And we've been kind of combating this for a long time, saying an approval code means two things only: that the card is open for transactions, meaning it's not listed as lost or stolen, and 2, the funds are available to cover the amount that was charged. It does not mean that the person requesting it, especially someone making the request over the phone or via email, is authorized to do so. Another challenge we have is just a lot of the fraudsters targeting agents here in the U.S. are operating outside the U.S. We here at ARC, we like to think that we're pretty aggressive about going after these people. We do what we can to disrupt what they're doing, but at the end of the day, with someone operating, a fraudster operating out of Nigeria, it's going to be extremely difficult to obtain law enforcement assistance in tracking them down. So we like to do what we can to disrupt what they're doing, get passengers stopped, get tickets voided, but it's definitely a challenge. And we also know that the challenge is, agents want to grow their business. And so you want to be open, you want to be able to take on new customers, but we really want you to find that balance. What is your appetite for fraud? The more you open up your business, the more likely it is that fraudsters are going to find you. So you need to find that right balance and be smart about opening up your sales channel and in order to protect yourself. And at the end of the day, you want to think about, these new customers, you want to believe that they are who they say they are, but that in order to protect yourself, you need to trust but verify. So on to how fraudsters operate, and really what it comes down to is what we call social engineering. So when they do these things of contacting an agent and either getting them on the phone or exchanging emails back and forth, what they're up to is referred to as social engineering. They're trying to manipulate the customer service skills of the travel agent to get what they want, which is to get them to that travel agent to feel that they're trusted, that they're comfortable doing business with them, and they're going to come up with all kinds of various means to make them feel comfortable. And one of those things they do is the fraudster will pose as someone like a doctor, a minister, a lawyer, someone with perceived social standing. I know we here at ARC have been warning about especially the doctor scheme, we call it, for the 23 years that I've been here at ARC, and yet fraudsters still do it. They still like to call themselves Dr. So-and-so. They also like to make straw purchases to make themselves appear legit, to make themselves look as normal as possible. So typically, when a fraudster contacts an agent, they'll make what we call that straw purchase. It's a ticket that's never meant to be flown. It's simply a way to establish a relationship and find that agent that's going to issue tickets. And that it'll be a boring ticket, 1 month out. If the fraudster's targeting agencies in the Chicago area, he'll order a ticket, say Chicago to Los Angeles, 1 month out. Those are the types of tickets that agents routinely issue, of course. Very few red flags, nothing obvious. It's just meant to establish that rapport between a fraudster and a specific travel agent. And of course, at the end of the day, we know that travel agents, you want to help, you're there to help. And these guys have found ways in which they know they can attempt to manipulate the agent's customer service skills. As we mentioned before, fraudsters change their fraud schemes and tactics. As we here at ARC learn about what these guys are up to, we will periodically put out alerts. Hey, look for this type of customer interaction. These are some of the red flags to look for. Be careful. When we're talking to owners and managers, make sure that you push this information down to out to the front line to make sure that the front line knows what's going on and they can more quickly identify when they are being targeted. And also, some fraudsters, they're comfortable in doing one type of scheme. Say they like to target leisure agents. Some will, on a Monday, target a leisure agency, and if they're not successful, the next day they're targeting corporate agencies in coming up with a different tactic. On a third day, they might come and try to find an online agency to see if they can get their transactions through. So some are willing to switch back and forth between tactics, and others like to stick with what's tried and true and see how far they can get. One of the things we also, be wary of new customers that are ordering tickets for other people. Like I said about the straw purchase, typically that first one is going to be in their name, which is really their alias that they're using at the time. And as I mentioned before, it's a boring order. It's the tickets 2, 3, 4, and 5 that are real customers of these fraudsters, and you have to think about them as the fraudster is in effect a black market travel agent. He has customers coming to him wanting to travel, and he's got to find a way to manipulate an agent into issuing tickets for him against a compromised credit card. And these guys are not dumb. They will do their research online to appear as legit as possible. We still have fraudsters out there that will go onto big corporate websites, university websites, and they will look for employees in these companies and colleges, universities, and take their identity and their title. And then they will find out sometimes by, we believe, calling up the university and saying, hey, who's our travel agent? And they will get them sometimes to even refer them into that corporate travel agent. So the corporate travel agent who gets referred in from their corporate customer is often feeling, why wouldn't I issue tickets? It's been referred in by someone that I know from my corporate clients. So it is a very sneaky way in which these guys can manipulate the agency community into getting what they want. And I mentioned before about red flags. You can take a look at this list. This is what we've put together. If you think about a stoplight, green is go, there's low risk, yellow is medium, red is high risk. If you take a look at this, you can get an idea of why we're going way beyond just customer, an approval code. We're looking at itineraries. Where are they going in and out of? What kind of email are they using? What kind of telephone? Is it a landline? Is it a cell phone? Is it a VoIP telephone number? Why are they asking your agency? So these are things that we request, especially frontline ticket staff. Look at who's contacting you, why are they contacting you, and hopefully thinking of some of these red flags. And it's usually not 1 or 2 red flags when you look at it. It's 3, 4, 5, 6 red flags when you really start to get an idea of who you're dealing with. So here's an example of what we call a solicitation email. And these are being pumped out by fraudsters on a daily basis because we get our travel agent customers who are forwarding them into ARC all the time saying, hey, I know this is going to be fraud. Just wanted you to know about it. So we really appreciate when these types of things are sent into us. It allows us to look at what alias the fraudster's using that day, what email addresses they're using. Here we can see 2 different email addresses. Oftentimes there's a telephone number in there, and when you go to whitepages.com, do reverse lookup, reverse phone, and oftentimes it will come back as a VoIP phone. So it doesn't mean that a VoIP phone is bad in itself. In fact, we here at ARC, we're calling in on a VoIP, voice over internet telephone number. It just means at the end of the day, you really do not know where that fraudster's operating from. But here is an interesting one. We have someone claiming the name of a very generic name of Jeffrey Smith in the from line and the down below in the signature block. Now he's David Cole, relatively generic, but in the email address, we've got a Milagros Miller. So I don't know, I can't think of any time in which I use 3 different names in a single email. They also, for some reason, like to create these in all caps. Not sure why, but they like to do it. And so I know, or we know at ARC from our experience, most agents will immediately recognize, I'm not touching this. this is a fraud attempt, and I'm just going to delete and move on with my day. We do recommend or request that you forward these to ARC at our stopfraud@arccorp.com, and we'll show that email address again. But it does allow us to stay on up to speed as much as possible with what the fraudsters are doing. Sometimes these will even have passenger names included, credit card numbers. They will also contain images of passports and driver's license, things like that. So those are little pieces of intel that we do use here, and we do research. And we will then, if we find that a new travel agency has issued tickets against that credit card or for those passenger names, we will warn them off about who they're really dealing with. So sometimes we kind of call it, it's our community watch. Very helpful. Another bit of info, as you could see from the previous email address, it was not the usual Yahoo, Hotmail, Gmail, Outlook type of account, but it had a fortune-ktv.com, and this is just a Google search that we did here at ARC of this recent solicitation email, and we could see that someone was warning. Here's a warning from a site called Scam Survivors, and this was just done 2 months ago, almost 3 months ago. So it's a clear sign or a clear warning, danger, do not be dealing with these people. But it does also show, a little bit of Google searching can lead to some interesting results. We know that that a lot of agents also will request new customers to email in copies or images of their driver's license or passports. This does not bother fraudsters because they love to use Photoshop and manipulate these images. This is a clear manipulation that an agent sent in a little while ago. But one of the things we do, and actually one warning before we go into it, obtaining this type of information from a customer over the internet will not protect you from a chargeback. So anything emailed in, faxed in, is not proof that you were dealing with the true card holder. That being said, it's still definitely a recommendation that you get this. Of course, you have to handle it carefully. You're using it for customer verification. If you're going to request it, take a look at it, because oftentimes, as I mentioned, many of these fraudsters are not operating in the U.S. Many of them are operating from places overseas in which their use of the English language is not the best. And they will make spelling mistakes, grammar mistakes. Here we've outlined a few. So in the street address, Folsom, BLBD 48th Street. So really, that's a style in which so we would see in South and Central America with the street number behind the street name. So in the US, this would be 48 Folsom Boulevard, and really it should be FOLSOM Boulevard, so BLVD. So a few mistakes right there. And then just the city alone, California, CA. We know that there's a California city in California, but I doubt this would be the DMV in California would make this type of mistake. We also have a misspelling for hair, should be H-A-I-R, of course. So these are things that we do recommend you obtain. Of course, once you get them, you have to secure them for PCI reasons. So you are responsible for ensuring that you handle this type of customer data, because if it were a legit California driver's license image, you are responsible for securing that. But definitely, if you're going to obtain it, take a look at it, enlarge these. Look for misspellings or grammatical errors. And this guy is just, his photo is just probably taken off of some unknown website. So this is definitely not the person we're after. We know that they routinely just go on the internet and copy and paste pictures off the internet. So beyond the driver's license and the passport, I know a lot of agencies will also ask for a copy of the front and back of the credit card. If you're going to get these, look at them as well. Look for any grammatical errors, any spelling errors. In this one, the fraudster forgot to add the letter L for platinum. But in addition, there's a neat free website called binlist.net right at the bottom. You can take a Visa or a MasterCard and go to that website, input the first 6 digits, and this website will tell you the bank that issued the card. Binlist.net will show you that that number is assigned to Capital One, and yet here the fraudster photoshopped an image of a U.S. bank card. So we know that something's wrong here. It's information mismatch that would not occur. And also look at the back of the card as well. This is where oftentimes fraudsters will spend even less time reviewing, even less time looking at. And if you can see, we've got 3 obvious errors here. So this card issued by full username. And really that should be the issuing bank. Below that, by using this card, the holder agrees. So it should be agrees to all terms under which it was issued, but instead of which they put WHIT. So once again, if you're going to obtain this type of information, take a quick look at it, enlarge the images. If they came in via an email, take a quick look. Does if anything looks wrong, then you need to think twice before dealing with your new customer. So another thing that they'll do is to make, in order to sign up as a corporate account, they'll try to make themselves appear as legit as possible. Corporate clients almost always are going to have a website. And so if the fraudster is going to spend time trying to talk an agent into signing them up as a new corporate account, then they'll go in and make a bogus website. And this is just a very basic website. The fraudster was claiming to be with a midwesternconstructions.com. He's got his address at the bottom in Cincinnati, Ohio. This is a downtown address in Cincinnati. There's no sign of a construction company there, and you can find that, of course, on Google Maps. Whitepages.com, reverse address as well. Looking at that telephone, once again, we've mentioned whitepages.com, reverse phone. That is a VoIP. Even though it is the area code 513, covers the Cincinnati area, this is, at the end of the day, because of it being a VoIP, we really don't know where the person is calling from. And what's interesting is this is down below highlighted that the founder, a nice generic name like Brian Kyle, talks about his great charity work with the Diocese of Pereira, which is in Pereira, Colombia. So what he's doing here is, once again, social engineering, manipulating as to when he starts to order tickets for passengers traveling in and out of Pereira or anywhere else within Colombia, he can always explain away back to the travel agent, look, from my website, this is what I do. Okay, I own a construction company, but I'm a charitable person. I work with the Diocese of Pereira. Why wouldn't you want to help me? But at the end of the day, it's a method to get that agent to think that he's a legitimate charitable person. So it's not above them, obviously, to try to pull the scheme. We also have them when they go in and they will find a legitimate corporate website or a corporate email address for an international company, and they will go in and spoof it, meaning they will go and create a domain that has the real corporation email domain as part of it, but they add a US hyphen UK or UK hyphen. This happens to be Raykiel is short for Raytheon in Kiel, Germany. Just shortened down to Raykiel. But of course, a lot of you may know or recognize the name Raytheon as a big international defense company. But the fraudster commands US hyphen Raykiel. And he will find out by social engineering, by contacting someone at Raytheon to say, hey, who's our corporate travel agent? And then get them to maybe even refer him to them, or just straight out of the blue start emailing. And if the corporate agent doesn't realize when they're hitting respond that email domain is not quite what they've been used to, they're in fact dealing with a fraudster and not someone legitimate. We've had instances we had a few years ago in which a corporate travel agent was duped in this scheme, and we saw in a 6-day period they rang up $220,000 worth of tickets in just a 6-day period before someone in the corporate entity, the corporate travel agency said, why are we communicating back and forth with this email address? It's not the proper one. And then they realized the scope of what had happened. Now they were able to avoid about half of the tickets, but the losses were significant. So these, in any story that we tell today, is real. We don't have to make anything up. These are all true stories of events that have happened in our industry. As I mentioned earlier at the beginning, it's not just corporations, especially international corporations that are targeted. It's universities and colleges as well. We call that the EDU scheme because if you know that clients that are from corporate or universities or colleges, they have an email address ending .edu. This is an example from a few years ago, but we have examples from just probably 3 weeks ago of the same thing, where they've gone on to the university website, they've done their research, and they found someone, and they found their name, the title, and they will then reach out to the university's travel agency and start emailing. But the key here is that the email is really coming from an Outlook. So whether it's Outlook, Yahoo, Gmail, any of the other free services, you should have a policy in place. Okay, the request came in, but the response should only go back to the .edu email address. The fraudster has also taken and inserted his own telephone number so that anyone calls him, then he will be in control. He will know that he's to pose as someone named Suzanne as a manager of accounts payable, finance, and business VP office / travel arranger. So I don't know about you, but that sounds exhausting. But that would be a good policy, best practice to put in place, not only for the college and university clients, but also your corporate clients. No matter how the request comes in for travel, you communicate out only through the official corporate email address or the EDU address if it's a university client. So these types of targets are still happening. And even though this is an example from 2015, it doesn't matter. They're still doing the same thing. We also have an interesting one that's become more aware of, or we here at ARC are more aware of, are bank card loyalty fraud, meaning this is a scheme in which the fraudster in effect takes over a cardholder's account. Oftentimes we learn through a phishing email where a customer gets something from an email or a text from what they believe is their bank. They respond back giving up just enough information that the fraudster can then go in and get into the account. Now, years ago, the fraudster would have simply, now that he controls the account, he would then use the account to make as many purchases as possible. But knowing that it's not as easy to pull off these days, these fraudsters will take control of the account, find out how many points are accrued, either points or miles, and then start siphoning them off for airline tickets or hotel stays. And of course, the bank is doing the vetting. They then pass along the customer who it's really the fraudster posing as the customer, and they pass them along to the travel agency that will fulfill the tickets for them. Sometimes they'll change the customer's contact information, their email address, maybe their phone, or sometimes they will put the customer's email information into a spam folder so that they're not touching it. It's meaning it'll get routed to a spam folder, which is not as well monitored. In this scheme, the banks will take the loss, but we are highlighting it today because of the fact that the fraudsters committing these schemes on a Monday, if they're not having any success, we'll switch to a traditional credit card fraud the very next day. And we here at ARC can see it, or on that Monday, if they are not having success doing traditional credit card fraud, they will then switch to this type of scheme. So therefore it confirms that the same fraudsters committing the two very different styles of fraud scheme. This is one where the corporate booking tools, fraudsters love them as well. And we talk about it today because you could have every process and procedure as a corporate travel agent. You know, all of your staff is up to speed on how to identify fraud, every policy and procedure in place, but your own corporate client might be the breach, the area of where one of their employees has had their login credentials. So for instance, if someone is working for ARC, and if we have a corporate booking tool sitting behind the ARC login page, if one of our employees here has their login credentials compromised and there's that corporate booking tool open, and now the fraudster has easy access and they can go in and start booking tickets as well. So you know, there's no breach at your corporate agency end. It's your own corporate client who's experienced the breach. But this will definitely, you know, there'll be plenty of finger pointing. It's definitely not a road that you want to go down if you can avoid it. So some of the recommendations that we have are definitely be aware of, you know, where your corporate clients are expected to travel to and from. Is there someone who's looking at unusual itineraries? We've learned that some corporate booking tools, they've removed high-risk airports from being even able to see bookings for those. We also definitely recommend turning off the guest booking feature. No tickets for clients without existing profiles. That's key as well. Don't allow an outsider to come in and set up shell or very lightweight profiles, because the fraudster knows how to manipulate those. Also, you know, communicating once again back and forth between you and a client. Not recommended to use the free email services. And we also have a different one where you turn it around and all of a sudden is a corporate client calling you up too much, when in fact they should be using the booking tool. That could be a sign that something's not going right. That may be an opportunity to reach out to your corporate client to say, so-and-so is calling in constantly, ordering tickets. Is this valid? So you might want to be looking out for that as well. I mentioned earlier that we at ARC like to think that we're pretty aggressive at going after these fraudsters. We do work with a lot of law enforcement to get them identified, get them arrested. We've had some successes. Here's a recent success, and we went after this kind of a catch me if you can kid. He was traveling around the country committing bank fraud. But in all of his travels, he was using fraudulent credit cards to buy tickets, not only through travel agencies, but also directly with airlines as well. He was buying all kinds of day passes for business lounges at airports with bad credit cards. So he's been incarcerated for a little over a year. He's due to get out at the end of the year. I think he's only, he's a young guy. Not sure if he's learned his lesson, but he's somebody that's going to be back on the streets soon enough. But we kept him off the streets. He has not, as far as we are aware, not committed any new frauds in the last 2 years, so that we count that as a success. We can't guarantee that he won't return to it, but for at least 2 years, we don't have to worry about this guy. Now, 3 guys that are, well, one of them is very much of concern. If you recall, if you've been in the industry since between about 2008 and 2014, we were constantly warning the agency community through fraud alerts about hacking of GDSs. So there were phishing emails going out in which these fraudsters, and these are 3 of them, they were harvesting GDS login credentials. And once they had the login credentials, they could remotely take over control of the GDS. And they had all kinds of customers that they were issuing tickets for. And the reason I bring this up today is thankfully it's been 4 years since the guy on the left was he was arrested upon arrival from I think from West Africa into France, and he was caught there. But in the meantime, he was then extradited from France to the US, and he is getting out in a few more months. So knock on wood, we have not had a hacking incident from these guys in 4 years. But if one of them is getting out, we have, once again, no guarantees. The 2 guys on the right are believed to be the masterminds of this activity, and we believe they are currently still incarcerated in a prison in the Ivory Coast. So we don't know if and when they will be released, but we may, hopefully it won't happen, but maybe hopefully they've learned their lesson, but you can't always count on that once they are returned back to, I believe it was Cameroon. So getting back to working with law enforcement, we do encourage agents to report in any frauds that are emanating from emails, exchanges, or even a phone call that involves a VoIP telephone number. This is the Internet Crime Complaint Center, IC3. It is part of the FBI. We here at ARC do work with them as well, sharing fraud data with them. And we do encourage the more that agents are reporting these fraud incidents into them, the better opportunity we have to take action. This is an image of the ARC corporate website. These are some of the fraud resources available. We do put out fraud alerts and schemes, we have best practices. We also have the free internet tools where we list out a lot of the websites that you can go to in order to verify or vet customer information. We have some of our partners in travel, some of the vendors that will be speaking throughout the month will be on that part. We've got people with convictions of fraud within our industry. We've got copies of some of the digitally altered images as well. So we try to push this out, available to anyone on the web that wants to go in and learn a little bit more about fraud. Here's a list of the upcoming fraud webinars. There'll be another one tomorrow. That will be How to Protect Your Agency's Bottom Line, presented in conjunction with Perseus. We've got a lot of really neat stuff. It's some of it's might be more geared for online agencies. We do have webinars on how to handle debit memos and chargebacks, credit card acceptance. A neat one is on the 21st. You know, you have what cyber criminals want, data protection and pitfalls by ARC. We also have the one about the dark net or the underground internet on the 26th. This is in conjunction with the NCFTA and federal law enforcement as well. The Fraud Awareness Month will be wrapped up on the 27th, in which we'll have a panel. And you can see that is ARC along with 3 of our vendor partners, FeatureSpace, Ethica, and Perseus. Myself and Cornelius will be a part of the panel as well. Hopefully, we'll be able to wrap up the month with a nice back and forth discussion about what our concerns are about fraud. Here's another chance to talk with ARC about fraud at ARC's Travel Connect, which is October 11 and 12, which is in National Harbor in Maryland, which is right outside of DC. And you can see register at arctravelconnect.com. And I want to thank you. Going back to those fraud, the email solicitations, forward them into stopfraud@arccorp.com. We are available also to handle calls toll-free, 855-358-0393. And I think, Judy, are we ready to answer some questions?
Yeah, Doug. For those of you on the phone, I encourage you to answer questions. We have about a little over 12 minutes left here. And we have Cornelius here, and we have Doug, who are experts in this arena. As Doug mentioned, there are ways to follow us throughout the month. You can follow us on social media, as Doug had said, and is at the bottom of the slide, hashtag ARC Prevents Fraud. They will have all of the daily webinars that I'll be showing. Also visit the fraud website on arccorp.com, where you'll find all of these recorded sessions after we've completed the month. There's a lot of good information, as Doug had said, anywhere from what he's talking about that hits you personally to the dark web, and the panel at the end will be great on the 27th, as Doug had mentioned. So we encourage you really to take advantage of all of these sessions each month, especially the ones that we're presenting in-house with our experts at ARC and different on the different topics. But we also have these guest presenters, the vendors that work in this area every single day. So please, we hope to see you on those, and thanks for everyone for attending today. Doug, let me see. It looks like I have a question here. This is about, could be on our end, but we wanted to call it out in case others were impacted. Hang on one second. I'm trying to read the message. Nope, that's all that has. Doug, I do have one question that's come up. And when you say fraud alerts are sent out, how are those communicated? Obviously that's just email, and it's for the email contacts that ARC has. How are those fraud alerts communicated out?
Yeah, we send them out through our weekly TAC report, or TAC message, which is TAC is the travel agency communication. So those are sent out every Monday to the community. They're oftentimes sent out in the agency newsletter. Oftentimes they will send them out as a separate blast email to people who have signed up for the fraud alerts.
Okay.
And we then will, of course, always post them on the ArcCorp website. So we're trying various means to, various ways in which we can get that information out into agency hands.
Okay, great. Here's one, Doug, that's come up in regards to chargebacks. What are the things that will help agents fight chargebacks or the risk of those, getting them?
Short of the customer coming in and you seeing the card. Now, back in the day, a remedy to a chargeback was always getting in a physical imprint of the card in the office. The card schemes no longer necessarily allow that as a remedy, but it could be compelling evidence that you, the agent, did see the card holder in your office because you have that. It's no longer a guarantee, but we always recommend if you have a new customer, they claim to be local, have them come into the agency so that you can see them, so that you can possibly run that, have that in file to say he was in our office, have that compelling evidence to show not 100% guaranteed, best practice.
And also, Doug, would it be helpful if agents did take a look on the Industry Agents Handbook at Section 6 in the handbook?
Yep, your card acceptance rules are definitely in the Industry Agents Handbook. Follow those. But at the end of the day, you need to be, we know that that's not how a lot of business is done. It's phone, email, website transactions. You've got to be aware of as an agent, what's your appetite for risk? And you have to balance out accepting new customers versus protecting yourself.
And also, sorry, just to add to what Doug said there, we have a webinar on September 20th, put on by Jennifer Watkins from ARC, that will reflect on chargeback management as well. So that's another good one to attend there around chargeback.
Great, thanks, Cornelius. Some folks have been writing in, will they get a copy of this presentation? Absolutely, we'll be sending the presentations out in the recorded ones. The goal is to try to send these weekly, but bear with, there's a lot of information and we need to work with our marketing department to create all the links. So just bear with us. Send email to me directly if you want it sooner, and I can send that presentation off to you. I know some folks have already emailed me asking for it today. So it's jhoward@arccorp.com. So please send that along. And Cornelius, is there any way to tell, or Doug, which of the seminars might be best for the online agencies? And if we need to, we can answer that offline. But Cornelius?
Yeah, sure. There's a couple that will apply to that. The first one would be, I'm just looking through the list, September 12th, Fight Fraud Through Collaboration. That's definitely one for online agents focused. The other one is going to be September 15th, Using Behavioral Analytics to Spot Fraudsters. That could be helpful for you there to understand that environment and how that technology can assist. And there's one other, I think, September, which is tomorrow's, which is how to protect your agency's bottom line. And that's, again, through collaborative data sharing and so on with purveyors there. And then, of course, another one of interest would be the NCFTA one, focusing on the dark web, just to understand where those fraudulent transactions are coming from. So there's a couple of ones that I could quickly identify there that could be helpful there.
Great, thank you, Cornelius. And just so you know, these can benefit all of you, whether there is more of a targeted content. These can only be helpful, and they're so interesting, and each one will have a different nuance to it and a varying topic with content. So none of these will be the same. So if you think, oh, I've attended one, I've heard it all, you really haven't. So we encourage you to tune in. And Doug, we've had a question, if you can go back to the slide with the list of the webinars. And if You can also go to the arccorp.com site, go where you can do search and just put in events, and they'll bring you to our events page, and it will have all of our webinars for this Fraud Awareness Month listed and a little description of what they're all about. So it's an exciting time. It's the first one that our team has put together, so we encourage you to participate, ask us questions, reach out, and see how we can help. I'm going to get back to a few more questions here. Can you repeat the email address to receive a copy of the webinar? Yes, I can. jhoward@arccorp.com, and I'll be happy to send that out to you if you need it today, tomorrow, before it goes out.
Even the Stop Fraud.
Awesome.
The Stop Fraud right there. We will ensure that any inquiries like this will get to Judy's hands, and she will respond.
Great, and we do have a few more minutes. If there are any questions, we'll wait a minute or so on the line. Otherwise, we'll give you back a couple of minutes this afternoon. But we do have, again, Doug and Cornelius here who are experts here. So if you do have, just write it in on the column on the right-hand side. And I'll do another plug for our Travel Connect that Doug had mentioned. That's our conference that we have every year, our annual conference. And that's an opportunity which doesn't happen often, where you can network with airlines and agents and GDSs and other third parties. So it's a really great event that we have every year, and you can also sign up for that at arccorp.com/travelconnect, and you can take you right there and you can look at the agenda.
We do have a question. Does ARC have any systems in place that will identify unusual transaction volume for its agent customers? Yes, we at ARC are monitoring for transaction volume. We're looking at any spikes in ticketing activity, and we will drill down into the transactions to determine, are these typical? Is this typical activity at an agency or not? We will do the research here and then reach out to the issuing agency to determine, is it fraud, or did they have group travel that came out of nowhere? But anyway, it's always a good conversation that we have with the agency community, and we get it so often where, in fact, they say, we appreciate that you are looking out for us, and it's just greatly appreciated that they know someone's got their back.
Okay, Doug, here's another one in Cornelius. Is there any way to tell if a phone number is via voice over internet without having to call the number?
Yeah, the best place to go, and we use it here at ARC, is whitepages.com, reverse phone. It will tell you one of three things, typically landline, cell, and VoIP. And it'll give you an example. VoIP is Google Voice or Skype. But anytime you see VoIP, you can rest assured you do not know where that customer is. Doesn't mean it's bad, only means that you cannot confirm where they, by looking at an area code. They could be anywhere in the world with an internet connection.
Okay, great.
And fraudsters love their VoIP phones.
I bet. Here's another one, Doug. Are there any specific cities that are considered high risk for fraud to travel to and from?
Yeah, we typically here at ARC are looking at airports out of West Africa, places like Lagos, Accra, out of South America, it's Johannesburg, a few more of the smaller cities in West Africa, and also in South and Central America. We have problems in several airports in Colombia, Panama, Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic. Places like that are higher risk for fraud transactions.
Yeah, so to add to what Doug said there, is that as ARC, we actually look at those airports, and we will inform the agents affected by any of that travel as well, and work with the agents to resolve some of those tickets that have been identified by ARC as fraudulent. We actively work with the agency community to prevent fraud and to mitigate losses to you as well. I mean, we've had pretty good success rates in the past couple of weeks here with some agents in which we've saved them $35,000+ thousands of dollars in working with them to identify fraudulent transactions coming through their system.
Great. Thank you, Cornelius and Doug. We're pretty much at our time here today. Really want to thank all of you for your time, and we hope you can join us tomorrow. And that one, as both Doug and Cornelius have said, is how to protect your agency's bottom line. That will be a guest presenter, Tony Ash from Fraudsters. And really, we hope to have you on. We know your time is valuable. These recordings will all be on the website after this month, but it's always nice to have you live so you can ask those questions. Again, thanks for all your time this afternoon. Hope to see you tomorrow or through all the sessions this month. Thank you. And again, always contact our customer care with any issues at ccchealth@arcorp.com or 855-816-8003. The fraud line that Doug has up here, stopfraud@arcorp.com. That toll-free hotline, 855-358-0393. Follow us on social media for this month, #ArcPreventsFraud. You can always contact myself, jhoward@arcorp.com. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great afternoon.